Hello, everyone. It's Philip Lee returning with another episode of Civil War Chat. Today is the 3rd of October, 2022. Click on the subscribe button here in the lower right to subscribe to future episodes, and also the notification bell in the far upper right to be notified when they're released. Now, if you click on that notification bell and provide a comment that will be found to be thoroughly bigoted by left-wing social justice warriors, if you do that, I will read it on the show next time. Today, I'm going to, we're going to look at a post that was made by James Bacon of Bacon's Rebellion, which is a blog up in Virginia, which I recommend that you subscribe to. Here's his article that he wrote yesterday on how to think about monuments. The conservative movement in Virginia faces a huge dilemma: how to build a big tent political coalition that is welcoming to African Americans and other minorities while resisting the cultural cleansing of everyone associated, however remotely, with the Civil War, slaveholding, or segregation, including founding fathers of the Republic such as Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. Now, the iconoclasts are full of fury, and their logic is simple. Monuments to Confederate soldiers and generals, they say, were erected as symbols of white supremacy and racism. White supremacy and racism must be expunged. Therefore, these figures must be removed from the public sphere. Step by step, this syllogism has been extended to any figure tainted by racism, segregation, or slaveholding. An individual's contributions and accomplishments count for nothing. Historical context is irrelevant. Artistic and aesthetic considerations of the statuary and pedestals are adornments to public places of no importance. Conservatives and traditionalists have been powerless to reverse this momentum. They have mounted many lines of defense, but they have counted for naught. When many business and civic leaders lament the iconoclasm in private, they are too timid, I'm going to say cowardly, to speak publicly. No one wants to be tarred as an apologist for white supremacy. Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia, who has been outspoken about divisive leftist concepts in schools, has been mute about monuments. He's a coward. The political parties, that's my opinion on him, the political parties are undergoing the greatest realignment in a half century, as Blacks and Hispanics increasingly see the Democrat Party as antithetical to their values and interests. For Youngkin, there is no upside to standing up for statues of Civil War generals. The challenge, as I see it, this is Bacon speaking, is for conservatives and traditionalists to articulate a set of principles regarding monuments and memorials that does not alienate the demographic groups, Blacks in particular, that the Republican Party is courting. Indeed, the rhetoric of conservatives and traditionalists should fully acknowledge the fact that African Americans in Virginia and America endured centuries of slavery, racism, and segregation, and that their experiences should not be discounted in our retelling of history. Insofar as they fought for liberty, we should unabashedly embrace them as our heroes too. It is not yet clear how we reconcile the seemingly contradictory aims of preserving memorials while reaching out to African Americans. Yesterday, I attended, this is Bacon speaking, a meeting organized to address the wave of iconoclasm. The meeting was off the record, so I cannot offer specifics, but it is fair to say that the attendees were united mainly in their despair at the erasure of history and their conviction that the cultural cleansing is part of a large effort, like the 1619 Project, to delegitimize the founding fathers and founding principles of the United States. However, there was nothing resembling a consensus on the path to move forward. Despite many caustic remarks, such as the recent comment that Bacon's Rebellion has become essentially a white supremacist blog, which is untrue. I have offered, I meaning James Bacon, have offered the blog as a platform for conservative and traditionalists to explore Virginia's past. This is literally no other, there is literally no other such forum in Virginia. I make no apologies for enabling the expression of thoughtful conservative viewpoints. Broadly speaking, there have been two themes to the defense of monuments and memorials. First is the quote, "they got it all wrong," close quote, defense. If you examine the inscriptions on the monuments and heed the words of the men and women who erected the monument, you will see that upholding white supremacy usually had nothing to do with it. As Carol Bova explains in her post about the Confederate statue in Matthews County, citizens who had endured the searing 4 years of sacrifice known as the Civil War were honoring loved ones who had paid the ultimate price. The reason the citizens of Matthews didn't erect the statue until 1912, which coincided with the apogee of Jim Crow, was that the Civil War generation was dying out, and the Matthews community, impoverished by the war and its aftermath, were too poor until then to pay for a fitting memorial. Much of the iconoclasts narrative is bad, ideologically driven history. That's those that want to tear it down have a narrative that is bad, ideologically driven history, bad ideologically driven history. A second apologetic theme focuses on why Virginians today honor the men of the monuments. We do not honor them for their association with the Confederacy or slavery. We honor them despite those associations. The iconoclasts can insist all day long that the monuments, the monuments mean to them, white supremacy, but they cannot tell us what they mean to us. We revere Robert E. Lee for his integrity, his character, his battlefield genius, and his critical role in reconciling the South to its defeat and reintegration into the Union. Those defenses are fine as far as they go, to my mind. They have validity, but they won't persuade the unpersuadable. We need a broader framework for preserving the artifacts of history from those who would destroy them. Now, Bacon subscribed to the quote, "the more history, the better" argument, close quote. Another phrase for it might be, quote, "let's add to history, not subtract from it," close quote. An example was found in Talbot County, Maryland, where there had been a controversy over a 13-foot copper statue of a young Confederate soldier inscribed with the names of the local men who died in the Civil War. Local leaders diffused the issue for a time by erecting a statue to native son Frederick Douglass, a Black man involved in the liberation of Blacks through editorials and speaking and that sort of thing during the Civil War era and also the Reconstruction era. Sadly, the additive solution of putting up a statue to Frederick Douglass did not last. Under pressure from the unforgiving, the Confederate statue was removed earlier this year. But Talbot need not set the template. In a pluralistic society, different people have different heroes. Having an inclusive society means tolerating figures who might be out of fashion with the cultural elite. We can reinterpret and contextualize the meaning of the memorials, but we impoverish our culture and heritage by purging them. I would add one more argument in favor of some, not all, of the monuments. The quote, "did they move the ball down the field?" close quote argument. If our only standard for historical figures is hewing to 21st century sensibilities, we might as well tear down every statue in the country, for not one person in the 19th or 20th century would be judged acceptable in every matter of race, class, and gender or sexual orientation that obsesses the 21st century. The criteria we should apply are these. Did the individual improve people's lives? Did he or she transcend human frailties through the integrity of character. Modern America did not emerge de novo like Venus from the half shell in its current incarnation. American democracy can be seen as a fitful 200-year struggle out of the feudal and monarchy hierarchy universally practiced in the world of 1776 and instead a movement towards an egalitarian society we envision for ourselves today. We should judge historical figures not by some utopian ideal, but by the degree to which they advanced or retarded the progress of American institutions toward greater freedom and equal rights. Let me try that again. Here's what he's saying. Modern America did not emerge de novo like Venus from her half shell in its current incarnation. American democracy can be seen as a fitful 200-year struggle out of the feudal hierarchy universally practiced in the world of 1776 and toward the egalitarian society we envision for ourselves today. We should judge historical figures not by some utopian ideal, but by the degree to which they advanced or retarded the progress of American institutions toward greater freedom and equal rights. This approach to history does not lend itself to simplistic good versus evil interpretations. That's a weakness insofar as complex stories are more difficult to communicate, but it is a strength in that it better reflects reality, which is complex, nuanced, and subject to continual interpretation. And I would add, this is my personal opinion, it is also a strength because it is the truth. Okay. As you can see, I'm pretty worked up about this. But look, people that would oppose this kind of argument are going to be in favor of critical race theory. And I want it firmly understood that if critical race theory becomes the accepted interpretation of American history, you can kiss all Confederate monuments everywhere in the 50 states and the U.S. territories abroad. They will be torn down. Street names will be torn down. Building names will be, street names will be changed. Building names will be changed. You got to get this. The dreadful frauds, critical race theory, and identity politics. $16 at Amazon and Barnes & Noble or other fine bookstores. $20 if you want an autographed copy from me. Email me, Phil, P-H-I-L _Leigh, L-E-I-G-H @me.com. One reason this is important is I have seen people interviewed on TV and in YouTube complaining about critical race theory, and then the person interviewing them, typically a cultural elite, says, well, can you define critical race theory? And they can't do it. Get this book and then you can do it, and you won't be tripped up by those kind of questions. If you really want to fight critical race theory, you've got to understand it. The Dreadful Frauds, Critical Race Theory and Identity Politics by Philip Lee. Get a copy so you can understand what it is that you're trying to fight and defend your position when the cultural elite tries to make you look like a fool. Okay, that's our show for today, and thank you for watching.